Riverpaw had nightmares that night. She was used to them, used to reliving the worst parts of her life. When she closed her eyes, she was immediately greeted with a dark alleyway. A flickering street lamp shed dull light on her mother's scarred body. Blood seeped over the pavement, and Riverpaw stepped back as the red liquid reached her paws. She closed her eyes tight. It's not real. I'll wake up. Her mother's voice drifted around her. I'll see you soon, River. Riverpaw shook her head. I'll never see you again, she choked. You're gone, Mom. The brown cat couldn't finish. She opened her eyes as the scene faded into black. In the distance, a point of light approached. It grew clearer, and Riverpaw gritted her teeth. A calico cat sat in a strange chamber made from roots. It was her mother, sitting in a ray of light that broke through the ceiling. The cat's pelt was clear of any scars, sleek and healthy like Shard used to be all those moons ago. Mom? Riverpaw whimpered, and the calico cat turned. Immediately, the silver-striped apprentice had to swallow a scream. Shard's green eyes were gone. The cat's face was a blank piece of fur. Riverpaw woke up. The cave was dark and still. Faded moonlight spilled through the entrance, dimly reflecting on the sleeping forms of the cats and wolves. Riverpaw breathed deeply, trying to calm her racing heart. She had had bad nightmares before, but somehow this one rattled her far more deeply than the rest. Looking around, she spotted Ava sleeping between the wolf brothers, her dark fur disheveled. The apprentice narrowed her eyes and looked away, staring into the shadows instead. Golden eyes glinted from the pall, and the she-cat stiffened. You interested in Ava, yes? Kite rumbled quietly. Riverpaw glanced around at her sleeping clanmates. No one stirred. She looked at Kite and gave a hesitant nod. The great white wolf blinked slowly. She interested in you. I see it. He turned slowly to look at his children's sleeping forms. His golden eyes softened. Surprised me. She hate most cats. Why? Riverpaw whispered, leaning toward the great wolf. Cats wrong her. Kill who she cares about. She wander alone. Lost. I give her home. And she want to be wolf. Think it better than cat. Riverpaw scratched her claws on the floor anxiously. She couldn't imagine hating her own species. Then again, didn't she? Cats had done terrible things to her. Kite's eyes flickered. You feel connected. Yes. Cats wrong you? Riverpaw was astounded at the wolf's keen insight. She nodded. But I don't hate them. I can't. A few of them saved me. Her eyes flicked toward Stonepaw and Echopaw. Kite was still, staring at her. Riverpaw grew uncomfortable, and finally the great wolf turned away. You do something for me, he murmured, staring softly at the dark form of Ava. Show her cat's not bad. She try to be wolf, but I die, and pack no longer accept her. No place without me. He lifted his head with difficulty, wincing in pain, and once again fixed the apprentice with his gaze. She must be cat again. Riverpaw felt a shiver run through her. Suddenly, she felt certain Forerunner had sent her here for a different purpose. She wasn't just meant to see her brother again. She was meant to meet Ava and Kite. The brown apprentice straightened her shoulders and nodded. Kite closed his eyes. Good cat. Riverpaw waited for more, but it seemed the great wolf had fallen asleep. She spared one more glance over at Ava, then did her best to curl up next to her clanmates and return to sleep. The sky was gray and clouded as Lily, Ashheart, Riverpaw, and Vilcus prepared to leave. Stonepaw and Echopaw bid her good luck, looking slightly uncomfortable. Riverpaw could tell the two had something to say, but Echopaw was trying very hard to be supportive and mature, and Stonepaw looked like he had a frog lodged in his throat. Every time that Tom opened his mouth, no sound came out. In the end, the two simply waved her off, and Riverpaw left feeling more tense and uncertain than ever. She cast a look over her shoulder, finding Ava sitting beside Farkas by the cave entrance. The wildcat's eyes hardened, and she padded out of sight. Riverpaw sighed, turning her attention on the path ahead. The trek was long and cold. The early morning breeze blew sharp and clear. By the time they reached the border, Riverpaw's pelt weighed with a layer of misty droplets. "This is the borderline," Lily meowed quietly. Nothing seemed to stir under the gray-blue sky, and the cats kept their voices low so as not to disturb the quiet. Lily seated herself at the very edge of the scent markers and wrapped her tail over her paws. She kept a close eye on the ridges of the season tree's territory. The others followed her example and sat quietly, barely moving. Riverpaw glanced back along the path and spotted Vilcus sitting patiently, watching them. A small horned sheep lay at his feet, his offering for the other tribe. Time ticked past slowly, and Riverpaw's mind wandered. She tried to keep focused on their task. They needed Windspeaker to agree to this plan. Even if Hisoka accepted, there was no way Ava could lead them all the way into the Rushing Waters territory. If everything went well, they still had to worry about fighting a wolf without any other creature's help. The faceless calico crept into Riverpaw's thoughts, and she shivered involuntarily. Ashheart pricked his ears and edged closer. "Cold?" "No," Riverpaw murmured, shaking her head to clear her troubled thoughts. "Why did you volunteer us? I figured you wouldn't want me doing any missions after, what happened." Her mentor was silent. A bird flew overhead, its call echoing over the ridges. "I'm worried is all. This whole situation is new to me. Did you know you were my first apprentice?" The she-cat stared at him. He chuckled. "Surprising? I asked Lightstar to hold off on me, as eager as I was to pass on my knowledge. I couldn't shake the feeling that I would somehow screw it all up." "You're not." Riverpaw struggled with the words. It was hard to imagine Ashheart as anything less than an incredible mentor. "You didn't screw up. I'm just stubborn." The Grey Warrior's face broke into an amused smile. "Stubborn certainly is a word." Riverpaw sniffed haughtily. "What I'm saying is, I can't understand you doubting yourself when any mistakes I've made are mine. If I act stupid, that's all me." Ashheart didn't look at her. His amber eyes were fixed on some point far off. After a few moments, he exhaled deeply and smiled. "So I finally realized how to get you to talk." "What?" He looked at her from the corner of his eye, a spark of humor in the deep amber. "You trade truth for truth." The brown she-cat flattened her ears. "Is that wrong?" she demanded, and her mentor flicked her shoulder with his tail. "Not at all. It just means I'll have to be more candid if I expect you to tell me what's on your mind. So speaking frankly," he leaned toward her, "I volunteered for this mission because you were a little too interested in the wolves, particularly the wolf cat Ava. I thought it best to get a little distance since they make me nervous." Riverpaw's tail flicked and Ashheart added, "Also, I was excited for this mission at one point. I thought I would be able to see history happening, but your misbehaving meant I missed what was going on. I couldn't volunteer because I had to watch you. The Season Tree tribe is my chance to see history at work. They originated when the clans journeyed to the mountains and fought a group of rogues threatening the tribe of Rushing Water. The rogues eventually formed their own tribe, and I am eager to see a group that was influenced by clans and tribe alike." The ThunderClan warrior sat back satisfied. Riverpaw kept her eyes trained on the rocks, observing how each crack and groove seemed to blend together. It was a good distraction from the strange mix of guilt, amusement, and appreciation she was feeling. For a few moments, the two were silent. "So," Ashhart finally murmured, "I told you exactly what was on my mind." The apprentice knocked a pebble with her paw. "You did." He waited. Riverpaw exhaled. "I'm nervous. A lot is going on right now, and I can't keep track of it all." His amber eyes were patient, yet they urged her on with quiet insistence. I really wanted to come because I needed to see Cloud again." "And you were happy with him?" "Of course. He's my brother, and he was incredible. I mean, when we were growing up, nothing really seemed to stop his enthusiasm. He was like Echo Paw, almost. An unstoppable force of optimism. Emerald and I..." Riverpaw froze. "Go on." She swallowed hard. "I looked to him for support when the worst was happening to us." She spoke carefully. I wanted to see him again, but the moment I did, it was like reliving the worst moments I'd ever gone through. And I don't know why." Ashhart was quiet. Riverpaw pressed her paws together. "He's just one of the confusing things in my life. Ava, why does she interest you?" The brown cat gritted her teeth. I can't put my paw on it." She hesitated. "Last night, Kite said..." "They're here," Lily interrupted. Riverpaw looked up. A group of cats was heading their way. The leading cat, a gray tom with yellow eyes, halted a few paces from Lily. A suspicious look marked his face. "Greetings. May I ask why you're here?" His tone was polite yet demanding, and Lily spoke carefully. "I am Lily that floats on water, Stoneteller's chief prey hunter. I'd like to request an audience with Windspeaker." "Windspeaker is occupied at the moment. Why not wait until the telling?" "This matter is urgent." She paused. "It has to do with the wolves that have invaded both of our territories." The Tom's eyes narrowed. He opened his mouth to say more, but his tribe mate interrupted with a yowl of alarm. "Wolf!" Immediately, the season tree cats crouched in frantic alarm. With wide eyes, they stared at the form of Vilcus, sitting far down the path. Although the wolf showed no signs of hostility, his presence alone was enough to thoroughly rattle the cats. Riverpaw couldn't blame them. "Stay calm," Ashhart meowed, stepping forward. He kept his tone as even as possible. "The wolf is not hostile. He is why we must speak with your healer." The season tree cats barely seemed to hear the warrior, but apparently that had wits enough to calm slightly. "Not hostile?" the leading tom meowed incredulously. "Yes," Lily replied, voice calm. "He has come with a peace offering. He abandoned his pack and wishes to help us rid the mountains of his corrupted leader." The season tree cats exchanged dubious looks. Ashhart waved his tail, and Vilcus picked up the prey and advanced slowly. The tribe cats tensed, but managed to stand their ground. Vilcus paused a few fox lengths away and dropped the prey. He dipped his head to the cats, who watched in shock. "We must talk with Windspeaker," Lily repeated firmly, and this time the leading tom did not question her. "I am Greyfeather of Small Bird," he meowed. "Follow me." The other tribe's territory looked remarkably similar to the tribe of Rushing Waters. Boulders, cliffs, and ledges made up most of the terrain. However, Riverpaw noticed quite a few more plants poking from between the rocks. At one point along the path, two small trees formed a twisted archway, and the cats had to step over the winding roots. Riverpaw wished she could pause and stand beneath their branches for just a moment, savoring the feel of being beneath foliage again. She hadn't realized how much she missed the forest. It was so bare up here in the mountains. So open. How could the tribe cats stand it? Through here, the leading Tom, Gray, said. The season tree cats had formed an escort for Lily and the clan cats. Vilcus had been allowed to follow with his prey, but only at a distance. The other tribe cats glanced back frequently with great unease. Gray paused in a rocky clearing, pointing a paw toward a bush, rather thick with dark green leaves growing at the foot of a steep cliff face. Lily nodded and, without hesitation, stepped through the bush, quickly followed by the season tree cats. Riverpaw watched as they disappeared, confused. Gray hesitated at the edge. Does it understand our language? He asked Ashheart. He seems to get the gist of it. Gray didn't seem optimistic about that statement, but he hesitantly approached the wolf, stopping several fox lengths away. You stay right here, yes? He meowed loudly. Stay. Vilcus dropped the sheep and sat, staring at the Tom with yellow eyes. Gray's hackles rose, but he seemed to force himself to stay calm as he turned and hurried back toward the bush. Inside. Quickly. Riverpaw approached the mysterious bush, and finally saw its secret. A tunnel extended into darkness, right into the mountainside. Her heart beat faster with excitement as she pushed her way through the leaves, swallowed by shadows. It was a rather small tunnel. There was no way Vilcus could have fit. Her whiskers brushed the sides, and she could not see her paws as they led her even deeper. The faint breathing of Ashheart and Gray echoed behind her. For a moment all wind stopped, and Riverpaw paused in bewilderment, causing her mentor to nearly crash into her. She continued forward, still uneasy about the lack of wind. No wind meant no exit, and there always had to be an exit. Riverpaw closed her eyes as she continued and focused on her breathing. Fear rushed through her. Suddenly, a breeze tickled her face, and she opened her eyes to find light filtering into the space. As it grew larger, her relief was like a crashing wave. She emerged into a cavern, catching her breath at the sight before her. The season tree's camp was a large, bowl-like cave. Light filtered in through a hole in the ceiling, illuminating the area with gray streaks. The walls were smooth and round, circling toward the hole far above. The rocks were a dull orange-gray, which Riverpaw imagined bursting with color when the sun shone. The floor was made of soft sand, marked with many paw prints, and there were a few other tunnels around the edges of the cavern, which led to other caves. Riverpaw could see a multitude of cats milling about, most looking their way in confusion or suspicion. However, the most impressive part of the space stood proudly in the center. On a slightly raised surface grew a large tree. Its branches reached upward and spread over the area, casting waving shadows across the ground. The tree's roots crept across the floor, some even reaching to the edges of the cavern. Riverpaw smiled at the magnificent sight, allowing her a moment to bask in its beauty. That is the season tree, one of the tribe cats said proudly. She was a dark gray tabby who had walked beside Riverpaw along their journey. It grows in this cavern as proof that the tribe of Endless Hunting is watching over us. It's really cool, Riverpaw managed. The gray she-cat cast her a curious glance. Are you not from the mountains? Your accent is strange. You're one to talk, Riverpaw thought, but said, No, we're from the clans by the lake. The gray she-cat's eyes narrowed. The clans? I see. Riverpaw wished she hadn't said anything. Ashheart had mentioned the tribe's history with the clans. Perhaps it wasn't a pleasant memory for them, the same way it was for ThunderClan. Riverpaw, come on, Ashheart called. He, Lily, and Gray had already padded halfway to the tree, and Riverpaw hastily raced toward her mentor. As she approached the base of the season tree, she realized there was a large hole in its trunk. It was as though something very strong had forced the twisted bark to split, forming a smooth, round opening. Riverpaw bounded forward, swept away in a sudden urge to explore the hole. Gray stepped into her path, stopping her. "This den is meant only for healers," he said. Riverpaw swallowed her disappointment and nodded, knowing this was a diplomatic mission. Lily and Ashheart stopped a few paces away, and Gray called into the tree den. "Windspeaker, the tribe of Rushing Water has sent some cats to speak with you. It's urgent." A few moments of tense silence, and then a cat emerged from the hole. The moment Riverpaw saw Windspeaker, her heart stopped and her dream came rushing back. A calico cat, so like Shard, without her mother's face. Eyes wide, the brown apprentice stumbled away from the healer, not daring to breathe or blink, fearing the illusion would melt away. "Riverpaw?" Ashheart meowed in concern, taking a step toward his apprentice. "Riverpaw, what?" She didn't look at her mentor. Gritting her teeth against her tears, she swallowed. "Mom?" Her voice was no more than a whimper. "Shard?" The calico cat looked at her in confusion. She cocked her head, her unfamiliar green eyes flickering without recognition. "Shard," Windspeaker meowed. "Who?"